Welcome to Your Time In. I'm your host, Adrian Shepard. Let's just jump in. So today's episode 3 of season 2, Pen and Pad. We're going to be joined by writer Brian Nowak. Let's get him in here.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Brian. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you. I'm so excited for this. Little spoiler alert. I have always wanted to write a children's book for my son. So I'm hoping to get some knowledge from you on that. So can you
I will be
tell?
more than happy.
Thank you. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Brian Nowak. I guess you could say I'm a horror writer because I do prefer to work in the horror genre. I also write mysteries and a sci-fi series, which actually it's more lighter sci-fi. I don't, my personal writing motto is always that I want to be the ultimate airport author. I want to be the guy that you grab their book off the shelf because you've got that flight that you need to spend some time reading on, and I just want to take you on a fun journey. That's all I'm going for. Nothing heavy. I'm not trying to, I want you to enjoy yourself because at the heart of writing, we're entertainers, and I want to entertain you because, well, that's my goal. That's my only goal. I want you to
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, you said I love when like if you're reading a book or writing or watching a movie, you know how they say the title of the book or the movie inside of the context.
Yes.
So you just described you said I love to take people on a journey, and we're on
Yes.
season 2, the journey.
Yes.
That stuff is so cool to me. So what have you what have you done to kind of start off on this journey? What got you started?
So I love to answer that question with boredom. I was in a meeting a long time ago, 2013. There I was, 2013, standing there in a mud hole no, I was in an office, and I was bored. So I decided I wanted to start jotting a story on the back of my notepad. And really, the conversation had nothing to do with me anyway. So I was just taking, little notes, little pieces here and there. And 10 pages later, I realized I had the makings of a pretty decent story. So I sat down and kind of, I hit the keyboard and plotted it out. And it ended up becoming a novel that I don't even sell, because to be honest, from a story standpoint, it's a good story. But from a technical standpoint, it's kind of a disaster. But it was my first novel. Here's a little secret for your audience. If you're a writer and you're writing your first novel's going to be terrible. It's only that's just that it's the writer's process, right? You have to write that first novel and get through that first draft, because if you don't, you're not going to learn. That is how you learn. A really good friend and fellow author, Patrick Hodges, and I talked about that at one point many years ago, about how that first effort is just something you shove into a drawer and you kind of forget it happened. I still have I still have it on my shelf behind me here, as a reminder from where I started. But I've learned so much since then, and that's that's really the growing process. The process of an author is
Yeah,
learning.
that's so true. So I wrote my first ever kind of novel when I was in the 3rd grade. And I used to like to draw, right? And
Mhm.
so what I did was take the books that I used to read and like take a little bit of everything from them. But I will say that that probably is not a published book anywhere. I don't know that I still have that book. Um, and I wrote another story in the 5th grade, and that one was more a little bit more detailed and everything. I was inspired by there's a book called My Side of the Mountain, and I
Okay.
can't think of who the author is, but that book, just the imagery that was created in that book,
Mhm.
just from the words, inspired me to write. And I've since fallen off from it. So I would ask, like, in all of that discovery that you've had, and even the tip you provided us and the audience, like, what is important about the journey that kind of kept you going and kept you motivated? Once the boredom set aside, what was next?
Well, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. First, let's begin at the beginning. We are the sum of our parts. So if you came into my office here, you would see books upon books upon books, and every one of those books actually adds to who I am as a writer. I don't care if I've got a book on Blackbeard over here. I've got a Terry Brooks novel, which I love. All of these things sort of add into me collectively as a writer. So when you get to the point where, so I'm a fiction novelist, I don't know that I ever truly get bored. Because, so take, for example, everybody loves to say, well, what happens when you get writer's block? Writer's block doesn't exist. I don't believe it exists. I believe you just internally have a hard time moving forward with your story because your brain, your subconscious really hasn't worked out that portion of that story yet. So what I always say is, if you can't progress in your current project, open up a Word document or flip open a new piece of paper, start writing something else. I don't care what you're writing. Write about how you think you're going to cook dinner that night. Write about how much you have a secret love of vacuuming. Write about, I don't care what you write about. Write something. Because I guarantee if you start writing and you just keep writing about anything that pops into your head, you're eventually going to get your brain back to the point where you're working on your story. Because the writing process is a lot like a pump, like an old-fashioned pump, water pump.
Yeah.
You've got to add water to it to prime it. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. You're just going to sit there. No,
Right.
You need to dump a little water in the, get it going. But not just books. Okay, don't think just purely in books. Art, music, literature. Go out and I love paintings. I love looking at classical painting. Is always very interesting to me, anyway, because you see the imagery and you think what was going through the artist's mind at the time. That's all going to feed into you and help you with your process. So just because you're not writing a book at that time and you want to be an author, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not growing as an artist.
So like we do this thing in coaching where, or even in life in general, as a human being, we take breaks. And that's why, your time in podcast, check back in. But those breaks are necessary because you mentioned some important things and I want to highlight them. Your conscious and your subconscious brain.
Yes.
The effect of when you're driving in the car, you have no idea how you made it to somewhere because you've zeroed out in your conscious brain, but your
Yes.
subconscious brain has driven the vehicle for you and you made it safely to your destination.
Right.
The important things are to let go, right? And do something else or occupy a different space. And I think that you highlight that exactly. Like when you hit that perceived block, even in your life, you have to do something else. And then it's amazing what happens with that perceived block once you've occupied that space with something else. That creativity is by far the most in that space than it is when you're actively reading that same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and it's a really bad situation to put yourself in, because all of a sudden you're sitting there, you get frustrated because you're not making progress. And then because you're frustrated, you try to push yourself harder to do something that got you frustrated in the first place. It's a cycle, right? So you said a really good point there. Step back, move back from that part, go look at, I personally, I have a podcast, All Things Writing, where I get to interview writers. I get to do that kind of thing, but it's separate from my novel writing. I also I play video games. I love video games. Who doesn't? Right now, I'm on an Elden Rings kick, But I sometimes I just have to kick back, relax, and kill a whole lot of low-level players. Why? because it distracts my mind. It's pulling me away from that novel writing process, and it all feeds into your creativity somehow.
Yeah, we have I do like yeah, I think that's the important thing is you're describing balance,
Mhm.
right? Whereas even if you love and thoroughly enjoy to do something, you have to have other things. There's more parts of you that you have to satisfy. I will ask though,
Yes.
I do want to, I'm so curious. So when you're doing your other activities or
Mhm.
your other hobbies, do you do those then spiral into maybe a creative thought or creative idea that then you capture in writing?
I think sometimes they do. For I guess, for example, for many years I was a pretty competitive fencer. You can actually see behind me. I've got one of my foils hanging off the wall. I also like to go to the gun range and shoot. I actually have a weapon over here on the wall. Not the BB gun. That's my Daisy Red Ryder carbine action 200 shot range model air rifle because I love the movie A Christmas Story. Um, but I enjoy these things. They are a step back, but they also get me to thinking. Okay, well, what would happen if? I was thinking the other day, what would happen if you were out fencing and somebody secretly removed the tip off their foil? Well, now you have an active weapon.
Mm,
You could kill somebody with that. That's not that hard to do. So, would that be an interesting way to murder someone? Well, I'm a
yeah.
horror writer. Yeah, well, you could make it look like an accident if you wanted to. If you're working on a mystery story, what a great way for the main character. By the way, nobody go out and do these things, okay? I want to say
Full
categorically,
disclaimer, full disclaimer.
do not kill anyone, okay? I'm not advising
we,
murder.
we are in a
Uh,
creative realm right now. Okay, this is creation of writing, not a life.
yes, not it's not a murder is not a good way to deal with your problems. Believe me, I write horror and mystery, and you won't get away with it because I have studied the forensics. They'll figure it out. But yeah, I think there are a lot of things that happen in life that inspire you. There's I wish I almost had a swivel camera at this point. There's a painting on my wall, and I walked into a store that was having my wife and I walked into a store. They were having like a 75% off sale or 50% off sale or something, and it's art from a legitimate, wonderful artist here on the East Coast, and it's a painting of a young girl. She's probably, I don't know, the 14, I'm guessing, and she's standing on a dock, like a boardwalk, and she's looking over the edge at something. It's that at something that's interesting to me. What is
Mm.
she looking at? What has her attention? Uh, and it actually looks like one of her flip flops, maybe off. So I wonder if she dropped her flip flop in the water or something and she's trying to get it back, or maybe she's looking at ducks. This is why you need that additional art to feed you.
I think too, it's like for me, with even like so we'll talk about the coaching now. With the coaching, people say things that they're not even aware that they're talking about, or maybe they feel like the impact of a bad day at work is what's really got them off rails. And then when you start talking to them, you're like, that's, you had an event at work, you did, but you were already that way before you went into work.
Yeah.
How was your drive? Right. That's what I usually ask people. So when you woke up that morning, was anything different? Did you cook breakfast instead of eating your bowl of cereal? Did somebody cut you off on the road? And then you arrive at
Yeah.
your present moment, right? And then, oh, when you got to work, then you noticed that thing that made you get off the rails. Maybe you wouldn't have noticed that had you have started differently.
Yeah.
Um, and I love when I can do that in a book, right? When I start a book and I start with one preconceived notion or a bias, right? That we all
Mhm.
naturally have, and everybody tries to pretend like they don't, but we all have natural biases. And
Sure.
the only way to overcome them, by the way, is to acknowledge them. But so when I start reading a book, that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, oh, the title, right? I always get sucked in by the title and the cover art. And by the way, I was on your website and I did see the cover art with you. You see you in the center, and then you're surrounded by books. And I
Yes.
want to congratulate you because every one of those pieces of cover art are literally works of art. Like I really, really, really like them and am intrigued to read them. There's one in particular, and I don't want to misquote it, so I just opened it up. I really like the Dramatic Dead cover.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
absolutely love that cover. I'm intrigued
That's
by
my
that.
current. That's actually my current bestseller. Referring to this one here.
Yes.
I'm actually now. Don't freak out. I'm working on actually changing the cover.
Oh,
The reason I'm working on changing the cover is because the Dramatic Dead and the Reverend Dead are actually two in a series. I want to get the covers to match a little better.
oh, okay, okay. I'm looking at them. Okay,
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay, I approve.
But it's well, thank you. Adrian said it's okay. So, well, and, and it's interesting when people come to my table at shows and they look at, there's always this, what is your conversion rate on people that come to your table? If they read the backs of the books, especially the Dramatic Dead, they almost always buy it. There's something about the back of that book, and actually all my books, that sort of draw them in. But I've gotten better at writing the back matter over the years. Everybody hates writing that, by the way. You talk to 50 authors, 150 of them will say that they hate it.
Yeah, I feel like
'Cause- yeah,
I do read the back cover, but what gets me is I don't know what it's the technical term of it is, but like the dedication page. I always
yeah,
go to the dedication page. So I read the back and I'm like, because a lot of the times you see a lot of accolades on it, and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's great. But then I go to the dedication page
yeah.
and I read the dedication and I go, huh,
That's
okay.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I uncover a book. I don't know that, I mean I'd like to think that I'm not the only person in the world that does that. So maybe that's another thing to maybe get curious about. And because I read every single, even if they just say to Jude, I love you. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, simple. And then I try to grasp like kind of where I think the book will go between the two, the cover art and the dedication page. That's
Hmm.
I always do that.
This is really fascinating. I honestly don't think I've ever had anybody say that. I
Ah,
sell a lot at shows and conventions, and actually, that's literally where most of my sales come from. And I don't think I've ever had anybody sit there and read the acknowledgments page.
acknowledgements page.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. See, I knew I didn't know the technical term, but I read that page. So I mean, that's just me, and I think that the importance of doing for me, like even having the podcast is there's somebody that's maybe going to encounter this or listen to this that's going to relate to that. And that's why I wanted to do the Journey series is that
No.
there's people that are listening to you talk right now and they were like, can you please correct him? Please correct him on the name of the page, please. And
Sure. I mean,
it's and I like that though. I like that there's people that will relate and that will help somebody with maybe starting to become an author themselves. And so I want to ask you, what's the first step in your opinion of just becoming a writer? Are we all inherently already writers, or is there something that we need to do?
so
Or,
there's a great quote from Stephen King. If you're a writer or want to be a writer or just somebody very interested in the writing process, because believe it or not, there are people out there who follow writers because they just sort of enjoy the writing process and they're fascinated by it. There's Stephen King has a book called On Writing. It is mandatory reading for anybody who writes, and one of the things that he says in there is anytime you write, congratulations, you're a writer. And I think that's a very valuable I think it's a very valuable thing, It's important to grasp that the first thing you have to do when you're a writer is start writing. Just pick up a pen. It doesn't matter. Pen, paper, back of a napkin, Word format, whatever, do it. Um, Again, you have to prime that pump. You cannot prime that pump unless you start writing. So So just do it, man. Just do it. I always tell people, look, if you can carve out 5 minutes a day to write, great. Work on 10. If you can work on 10, work on 15. If you can work on 15, go from there. And remember, not all writing is, or not all writing is writing. And what I mean by that is there's things like editing and research and all kinds of things that have to be done that are part of the writing process. And they all count.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. So I always wanted to write a story, like a children's story to my son, kind of
sure.
like a not a memoir, but like a letter to him.
Okay.
And if other people relate or benefit from it, that's great. But the whole purpose of the art and everything would be for my son to read, like as his first reading book, to be able to read that book.
Mhm.
That's what I want to go towards. And it's actually sounding more achievable that you broke it down. And if I can do, because I just look at these novels and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I get intimidated by it because I go, how in the heck did you go and start writing and then know that that was the end of a chapter? And then to start the new chapter. And then at some point, like, the novels that twist and turn, and then they take you back to like chapter one on that little thing that was on the table. And that, like, how in the heck do you like, okay, you remember because you wrote it, but how do
Mhm.
you know that that story is going to transpire that way, or does it develop as you write it? And that's the stuff that, like, in my head, it intimidates me because I go, okay, well, I'll write a book and I know what I want to write it about to him. And but then it's like, at some point, what am I trying to get him to think about as he's going through the pages? And then I know I can do the beginning and the conclusion, but that middle piece, right? I forget what it's called, but where you peak and then you kind of start coming back down. That part is the intimidating part for me.
No, peak works.
Yeah.
Crescendo, the I don't know. We actually, when you're talking about writing, you talk about it's this very much roller coaster style
Mhm.
hill where you hit that top part of the roller coaster, that peak, right, and then you come down. Shoom. Um, that is the point that you have to see. I don't actually think about that. What I think about
Mhm.
is I have a character, because the character is always first in my mind. I see something and I think, oh, that would make a great character for a book. Let's go with that. And then I see the end. Where do I want that character to end up at? And then it sounds creepy, but then I let that character start walking. And I really just chronicle the events that make that happen, with the understanding that you're going to hit that point. You're going to hit that peak and go, okay, there we go. That's what's happening. That's their big thing. But it happens over time. It's just a gradual process. Um, I think you have a great idea. I really do. But you ask the critical question, why? Why am I writing this?
Mhm.
You have to write a book that you are going to want to read to your son, or your
Mhm.
son's going to want to read. But you have to like it first. That's my
Right.
biggest piece of advice. I know we're coming to the end of our time, but that's my biggest piece of advice. You have to write the book that you want to read. Don't write a book that you think other people are going to read, because all you're going to be doing is chasing trends. Don't do that. Write the book that you want to read, and I can guarantee other people will want to read it.
Right. It's kind of like, you know what you like, you know what you want. You have to be intentional when you start the pen to the pad. Be intentional with what you want to achieve an outcome, and I think that it'll flow. Like, I'm actually connecting with it. I'm going to challenge myself, that I'm going to have it within the next 2 months. I'm going to give myself a timeline, 2 month timeline, that I'll have a draft, and I'll start reading him the draft, and then start editing and tailoring it from that point forward. I think that's my new short term goal, actually.
And and forgive yourself. That's
Yeah.
another piece of very important writing advice. You're going to have goals that you're going to set, and you're not going to meet them. And don't be so hard on yourself that it's going to break you. It's not. as a writer, you have to understand that I have a novel that I currently am shopping around with agents and publishers. It's a long, it's a honking, it's 108,000 words. And if you
Mm,
consider, so the Dramatic Dead comes in at about 76,000 words. So it's quite a bit more than this one. So you consider it
mhm,
in terms of thickness. It's a big book. I wanted to have that written in a year. Took me two, um, because it was such a complex story to tell.
mhm.
But I was not hard on myself. I,
Yeah,
you got to take your time, do it right.
that's it. And then check back in with yourself too. Like
Yeah,
everybody forgets that part is the motivations that you have in life change and everything, and you have to check back in because there's always going to be shifts around you. You have to make sure that you're still good.
yeah.
I love that actually that you just said that. It's one of those things that we think it all the time, but nobody ever actually vocalizes that to, and we don't vocalize that to ourselves.
We're too hard on ourselves as
Yeah.
human beings. We're just really, we expect ourselves to do everything and everything to come out right every single time. And that's not reality at all for anyone.
So we got about 3 minutes left. Do you want to tell us about how you got to All Things Writing podcast? How did that come about?
Well, that came about. That was a COVID baby. I wanted to chronicle my writing journey, and I tried blogging, and I had a very hard time with blogging because um, I don't know. I think it was easier for me to talk about. Now I still write scripts for the show, but it was easier for me to talk about the writing process than it was for me to blog about it. So All Things Writing has been going strong since then. We're on our third season, 92 episodes, 93 episodes in the can. We've just had a great time of it, and if you're interested in writing, head on over to All Things Writing and check us out. Actually, I just put up a Facebook page for All Things Writing. Just got around to finally doing that 2 years later, but yeah.
Yeah, the
But
maintenance the maintenance piece is me and you both understand the maintenance piece.
yeah,
Uh it
what
is
goes on behind the
definitely.
scenes?
Yes, yes, and that
Yeah,
is why, we appreciate all of our fans because are the listeners too, because there's a lot of work that goes into orchestrating these
there's a
things,
lot.
and we do it all. So I personally enjoy doing it, but we do it all so that you can reap the benefit of it. And we're just here to serve and support and get the words out, and we're just
To
vocalizing.
encourage.
Yes, yes. So kind of your final thoughts. So the premise of the journey is to help people get unstuck. So for those people who are on the same journey of writing as you, do you have any last words of encouragement for them?
Don't be so hard on yourselves. You're going to get to where you want to go, but you need to give yourself the space to make those moves there. Write every day. Don't let up on yourself, but also forgive yourselves when things don't work out quite the way you want them to. But you're going to get there. I encourage you.
All right. And where can the people find you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Brian the Writer, spelled with a Y, by the way. You can find me on All Things Writing Facebook page. You can also go to www.briannowak.com and you can see all of my wonderful books and everything else. You can find me on Amazon. I'm kind of all over the place.
Well, thank you for joining us, Brian.
Thanks,
I
Adrian. It was
appreciate
great.
you on. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. As always, break time's over. Time to check in.